Now here on the main stage of Green Tech, we are shining a light on the business case for fresh vegetable production in indoor farms, and I'm delighted to have Damion Schwarzkachel from Certhon here with me. Damion, greetings to you.
Good morning, thank you.
All right, and we also have from Signify, Könisser. Greetings to you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
We'll come to you in just a second. We're going to start with Damion and just ask, what is the power of LED?
Wow. Well, we think it has some unexplored potential, which I hopefully in this session together with Tom can show you what we can achieve with LED lighting in indoor farming.
So you're talking about sustainability, of course, energy, but also facilitating indoor farming to a very, very large extent, correct?
Yes, that's yeah. I couldn't say it better.
Okay.
Exactly like that.
You have a couple of charts for us to look at just to illustrate what's going on. So let's get them up on the screen, and if you could just walk us through those very briefly, then we'll bring Tom into the discussion.
Yes, let's do that. So I'd like to start with a short introduction. Thank you, Andrew, for this opportunity. So together with Signify today, we like to shine a light on the opportunities for profitable gains for fresh vegetables. And of course it starts with Certhon's well-established company, Signify, Philips, in the past also well-established, and we're a long time already in the industry. And we see that the world's changing and we need to act to the awareness that we see around us, better environment, and basically produce in a smarter way fresh vegetables. So this also brings commercial, say, opportunities with it for our companies, but also for the producers. So one of them is from consumer perspective. That's where the awareness touches in again.
We saw the children in your image just before, so starting at a very early age.
Exactly. So they already are educated now to be critical about the food, about the freshness, about the healthiness, and that's basically, that translates to the consumer of today and also of the future. And then, of course, also in the supply chain, the food chain, the retail, for instance, selling it in a different way, advertising food, and also like adapting to what is the awareness and translating that in new business models. And that's where we, Signify and Certhon, fit in very well with our technologies and solutions to fulfill that. So Certhon is a company that makes complete projects, so we have all technology in-house. I will not elaborate too much on it, and we have a partnership also with Denso for robotization.
And we have all that online as well in your profile.
Exactly.
And also all your colleagues are online to answer questions and go through that. And we have some time, I think, as well, a little bit later to answer questions here in the studio. So if you want to send some questions to us, then do so. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, very good, thank you. We also invest yearly in innovation. So we have an own innovation center where we are working on the technology and growing methods of the future. Signify also has its own GrowWise. Tom will tell you later on a little bit more about that as well. But we're looking ahead, so not just to today, but to tomorrow. And that's why we're also quite focused on indoor farming. So the perspective we have is on operational excellence. So basically, if I summarize it, with full climate control, to get the most harvest and yield, best quality, uniform around the year with the least resources. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the message that we're bringing, and that's where our technology fits in quite well. So together with Philips, so the LED lighting is a fundamental topic in the full climate control and the growing of plants. So it starts with the knowledge about what light recipe for what crop, but that fulfilled with also all the other climate controls to have a perfect balance. So then, yeah, we like to focus a bit more today on the indoor farming, but we also implement, of course, LED lighting in greenhouses. And in this graph, you can see the difference. At the left, a greenhouse with supplemental LED lighting. And basically, you're still responding to the climate, so it's more difficult to grow, actually, while the autonomous growing control systems become better. In the indoor farm, that's in the right side, you see a graph. It's predictable. Every day is the same, and with the right LED lighting, we can predict it to the not only the harvest, the yield forecast, but also the quality and the nutrients and everything.
It's very clear.
So then to end the introduction, together with Signify, we're developing a project for mother farms in the UAE. Also the minister who opened the Green Tech, of course.
Her Excellency Mariam Al-Mahari, the Minister of State Food and Water Security.
So from the UAE, very focused on food security, and that's where the solutions fit in exactly. And this is one of the first projects in the world to develop tomatoes year-round in a desert environment.
Using Dutch technology, Dutch expertise, not only from Certhon, but really there's a very strong partnership there with the UAE.
Yeah, and also with Signify LED lighting. So as an example, why is this interesting? There's operational excellence and quality. At the left graph, you see uniform production, every day the same amount of kilo produced, and at the right side you see a Brix value, which is the sweetness of the tomatoes, in this case of a cherry tomato, these graphs, always above 8. So, and that's what retail also likes to see, quality year-round, the same taste profile. So that's where I'd like to leave this introduction, and this is Her Excellency in our innovation center, so she's on top of all the innovations of Signify and Certhon.
Just help me with one question right now, and that is, how does this ability to be able to control the uniformity of the climate and the lighting in particular, how does that affect profitability at the end of the day?
So by optimizing every step of the process, so balancing out every step by having plant densities to the maximum, so basically drive up what's done in nature to a more optimal, balanced level. That's why we can do it more efficiently.
More efficiently and increase the yield as well?
Increase yields and waste less resources. Okay. So if the quality is better in the whole food chain, then there's less food waste as well.
Excellent. Shall we bring Tom in?
Please do so.
Okay.
I think he has much more to bring.
Tom, tell us a little bit about Signify. Obviously, Damion mentioned before, formerly Philips, if you like, but what kind of solutions is it you're offering right now for indoor farming and for verticals?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank Certhon for inviting us here and being part of this discussion. Yeah, so we actually, as before Philips, you're correct. Nowadays, as Signify, we've been actually active in horticulture since 1936 already, and with LED lighting since 2007. That's when it all started, and we've been working since then on both greenhouses and vertical farming. In several segments. So we work on vegetable production, high wire, also lettuce, strawberries, and we work on vertical farming projects. We've been doing that since 2007, and actually since 2008 we've been partnering already with Certhon. And together we have developed and realized many greenhouse projects and also some of the vertical farming projects that were there from the first day. You saw in one of the pictures the facility of Delissen. That is one of the projects we realized together, and we're looking very much forward to realizing the Madar Farms project.
But a naive question, basically you're providing just LED bulbs?
If you narrow it down to the very basics, yes, that's ultimately the product, the hardware that we supply. But what makes us special is that we combine this with a lot of so-called software, so that is knowledge, advice, support around each project that you also saw in one of the pictures. We work together with in a team of plant specialists, application engineers and sales around the customer.
So it's a lot more than providing just a product.
Yes.
In fact, the product is probably the easy part, right?
Yeah. And actually, in most of our meetings with customers and the partner, we do not discuss that much about the light bulb itself, about the LEDs itself. It's much more about the crop, the lighting, the climate system, and everything around that, and how to, in the end, make it a profitable business case.
Good. Damion, you work with Signify very closely. Could you not find anyone better?
No.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
No, I think, like Tom mentioned, we're both companies focused on knowledge. Yeah. So being ahead of the game, innovate. And if you look at how projects are developed, like yesterday with Rex One, where we look to, it starts with the seed. It also starts with the seed, with the integrated design of bringing the LED lighting solution together with the climate control together to the most optimal solution you can bring to the table. And I think for that purpose, you need to work in consortiums and bring each other's expertise to the table.
Co-create. So explain to me how you do that. You talked about your R&D labs, you have an R&D lab as well. Those are high security areas, right? You don't let each other go in there, do you?
Well, it's like going into a bakery shop. You can taste the pie, but we will tell not exactly how it's baked. So, okay. So it's quite open. Because if we don't tell what we are doing, if our agronomists are not interacting with agronomists from Signify or from Wageningen University or other institutes, then we don't come a step further in the industry. So it's a balancing of being closed for, say, commercial purposes development, and also knowledge sharing into the industry, also to educate growers and clients.
Good. And how important is the connection to companies like Certhon for you? You talked about getting the influence on your product and providing the right services. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, in our approach, in our strategy, it's crucial because we build a lot of knowledge around the crop, including the lighting, but especially in vertical farming, equally important is the climate, for example, and that is what we ultimately do not supply. So I think we know a lot about the lighting itself and everything around it, and we cooperate very closely with partners like Certhon to in the end deliver a total solution to the customer. And it doesn't really matter if the customer starts talking to us or starts speaking to Certhon. In the end, it will always come together, and together we know more than individually.
Let's move to the kind of crops which lend themselves particularly well to LED lighting. I assume there are differences there as well.
Yeah, well, in theory, you can grow any crop in a vertical farm with LED lighting that requires light. So we're not into mushroom production because it's not requiring any LED lights or any lighting at all. But apart from that, almost any crop can be grown. But we look at two things, technical feasibility. So we first look at can we grow a crop in a vertical farm and how well can we grow it? And then we have to take the next step, is it commercially feasible? Yep. Otherwise, it's nice to do. We've grown watermelon and other exotic vegetables and fruits, but it has to be feasible as well.
And what are the most feasible ones, perhaps in the Netherlands, for example? Is it tomatoes and lettuce, or?
Tomato is a very interesting crop. It's technically feasible, and then we are looking into where is it commercially feasible. So probably Madar Farms in Middle East is going to be a good example of that. Yes. Here in the Netherlands, in the Westland, competing with greenhouse growers, that's probably a different story. I think vertical farming all started with leafy vegetables because they are easy to stack in multiple layers. So a lot of the research we have done in the past was on leafy vegetables and herbs. For that we know for sure it's both technically and commercially feasible if you take the right approach. But it all has to add up in the end.
Tom mentioned, if you like, food security, so being able to grow things yourself and not being imported or dependent on imports so much, particularly relevant as the supply chain has had some imbalances in recent months, let's put it this way. Is that where you're seeing a lot of applications as well of the projects which you are doing?
I think that's an accelerator in these times to basically focus more on the fully controlled solutions. I think the need in the supply chain from the retail, from the consumers was already there. Like for instance, we have been already focusing on strawberries to grow in China or in Middle East, because these have long supply chains with a lot of cold steps, a lot of loss in the chain. So we can do that very well in indoor farms. Raspberries, tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, I can go on. And today we're still working for a lot of crops with existing growing systems, but also these will be innovated and further upgraded. That's now a high priority, also bringing in more automation. And I think that will unleash a new potential, also maybe for Dutch growers to look at supplying year-round a tomato here and don't have like a seasonal dip in the meantime. So I think we can expect many things in the coming years from our companies.
We have a question, and thank you, Tico van Leuven. For indoor and vertical farming solutions, what substrate are you typically using? It's not related directly to lighting, but in greenhouses, it's usually stone wool, apparently. So what substrate do you typically use for indoor farming?
So basically, we are not restricted to use any kind of substrate. So that's more a question of what's the growing method. In greenhouses in Holland and in Europe, you see a lot of stone wool. If you come across other regions in the world, you see also cocoa peat mixtures used. So it's often a comparison of what's available local in the market and what also fits the method of growing.
But for vertical farming, there's no problem in using any of those substrates?
Basically, you in the vertical farming and indoor farming, you will select the cleanest substrate varieties available as you want to prevent pollution inside a growing room.
Okay, but it has no influence on lighting concepts or ideas? Or
of course, you adapt the growing systems.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research done to that, but basically it's possible with all substrates.
Good, okay. Tom, let's look into the future a little bit. And could you tell me where you see LED lighting going in the next 70 years?
Okay, that's quite a long time.
Let's say the next 3 or 4 maybe.
Yeah, I think we have only just started with LED lighting, so it's still a relatively young application. LED has been around for many years, but applying it into growing vegetables and other crops is relatively new. Also both in terms of technology and application, so there's still a lot to be learned. We already know a lot. And we will learn much more in the future, and technology will develop further into the current increase in efficiency that will continue for a while. We see light levels going up, so there will be higher light levels being applied. If you can combine that with crops that are more capable of dealing with these higher light levels, higher humidities, higher temperatures, then there's still much more potential for increasing yield. For example, we clearly see a trend towards more dynamic lighting. That was more the domain of research facilities in the recent past. And now we see also with the current generation of LED lights that we have introduced last year, that more and more customers choose for this dynamic lighting. And that in our case means dimming plus also color control.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We have another question, Damion, again, not directly related to lighting, from Wim Roosen. Would you be able to grow tomatoes, for example, fully indoor with no sunlight, which are commercially feasible in hot climates, going back, I think, to the UAE, for example?
The short answer is yes, possible. And so we're developing now together with Signify and our client Mother Farm project, which will be up and running next year. And I'd say come have a look and have a taste yourself, because yes, that's possible.
Marvelous. And last word from you, we're running out of time slowly. The outlook for Certhon in terms of lighting concepts, using light, vertical farms, greenhouses, what do you see as the next steps?
Yeah, so basically you could say that we're constantly upgrading the weakest link in the chain. So at some moment that's the seed or the plant variety, other moments the growing system, then it's the lighting, then it's the growing recipe, and we're upgrading that each time to come to that we don't see to come any further. I think that will be for many years that we'll be active doing that.
Marvelous. Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. A very inspiring talk, and you've really shone a lot of light on my very limited knowledge, and I'm sure that the people at home as well have learned a lot from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.